Welcome to Joy, Love, and Abundance, designed to lift up and explore the people, organizations, and experiences that create a more joyful, loving, and abundant world. Join hosts Rodney-Eric-Lopez, Patrice-Tanaka, and Cyrus-Webb as they share stories and insights that will inform and inspire you. Enjoy today's broadcast.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to Joy, Love, and Abundance, both for our radio audience and those tuning in via the podcast. I'm Cyrus-Webb, excited to be joined with my friends Patrice-Tanaka and Rodney-Eric-Lopez today for this week's edition of our program. Rodney, Patrice, and we were just talking before the show began. I mean, I think people are still kind of feeling the effects of what happened last week, and especially, I think, the message of positivity that people are expressing when it comes to the inauguration and the whole attitude. Patrice, I mean, I know you're going to talk a little bit later about one of the things that really stood out to you that people are talking about, one of the powerful moments there. But what has that been like for you to kind of see how even, I think, that theme of getting together seems to be something that seems to be starting off with this new administration?
I know, and it's such a welcome message because I think we are all looking for, a new chapter, one where we put aside the vitriol and, our differences and try to come together and try to do things that can help all Americans. So I think President Biden is just the person to do this, and he's shown by, what he said at the inauguration, that he is focused on unity. He said, without unity, there's no peace, only exhausting outrage, which is, I think, what we're all feeling after 4 years. So ready to start a new chapter.
Yeah. And, Rodney, I think, too, it does not mean that everything's going to be kumbaya, right? I mean, one of the things I was saying to you guys about, one of the things that I'm thinking about is how we can truly, we've heard the saying, we can agree to disagree, but that has become almost such a nasty thing these days. I mean, what are your thoughts about how we can be able to move forward and how the tone seems to be set in that direction?
Yeah, Cyrus, thanks for that question. Politics, especially since our mind right now is on the political, sort of in the political space, since we're talking about inaugurations and transfers of power. Politics can be it can be a difficult arena. It can be, nasty sometimes. It can be rough and tumble. There can be some really strong attacks, among people. And one of the things that really stood out to me post-inauguration was one of the videos that was played in the evening, which was of three former presidents having a conversation, President Barack Obama, President George W. Bush, and President Bill Clinton. And one of the things that, in addition to just the visual show of unity that was a comment that former President Obama made that said, look, sometimes we can not only disagree, but we can disagree fiercely. But there is a baseline of respect and a baseline of grace and understanding and humility that you can bring to an interaction, because people in a community, people in a country can have very significant disagreements and points of view, but if you're able to look past the political conversation, we all have just the same human needs. We need to feel love. We need to feel cared for. We need to feel joyful and purposeful in our work and in our families. And so I think what that moment reminded me is that civil discourse and real understanding is possible, but you have to be able to see the humanity in another person before you can get there.
Guys, for me, I took this personal because I think for myself, I'm celebrating 18 years of my radio show this year. And one thing I think has been the success. Oh, thank you. But one of the things I think people ask me how have I done it? I have made myself known that I have tried to provide an open platform. But I have to say, and most people don't even realize this that listen to Conversations Live because of the variety of guests, I'm more conservative in my views, personally. But I have guests come on the show who I don't always agree with. Sometimes I will play devil's advocate with because I think it's warranted at times, depending on what the topic might be. But I grew up being told that you can agree without being disagreeable. And that whole thing about the Bible saying, be angry yet sin not. And that has been the way I have tried to live my life. And I think that's what's helped me actually when it comes to keeping my joy, is that I don't allow the very idea that someone doesn't think the way I think, that makes them evil, or that I'm great because I have a certain viewpoint. So I when I listen to what, it's very interesting for me, and I'm curious as to what you guys think about this, because even some on the left, it seems like, don't really like the whole idea of let's just move forward, let's just get along, because there's such anger from some, I'm not saying all on the left, but some that I've been watching recently that's like, no, there needs to be an account, there needs to be, this needs to be called out, this needs to be a reckoning, and I hope our audience can get to a place where, not saying that we are, saying bad things don't happen, but that we don't allow ourselves to be consumed by it. I'm curious as to what you guys think about that. Patrice?
Yeah, I agree. We can't live in our joy, love, and abundance, which the three of us subscribe to, if we always choose outrage, right? And joy, love, and abundance are choices that we have to make every single day. So if we can just remember to make the choice for what it is that we want to bring into our life, I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Rodney, what are your thoughts?
I agree with that in principle, and I also believe that you bring up something important, though, Cyrus, is that, when a wrong is committed, whether it's, sometimes it's a real wrong, sometimes it's a perceived wrong, depending on the perspective. But when a wrong is committed, I think that there needs to be some level of truth telling. There needs to be some level of accountability, because you can't have reconciliation in a matter until there is a level of accountability. And without getting into conversations about left and right, I do think that there is. There are facts, there are objective realities that one can point to, and if one side of an argument isn't owning their responsibility in something, then it's hard to get to that joyful and loving place if you're saying I've been hurt and I've been wronged, and the other party can't at least acknowledge that there was a part in that. And so it can get fraught. But I believe that there's a way to do that. There are restorative ways to mend relationships, whether they're personal relationships, familial relationships, and frankly, even national relationships. In this country as large as the United States, we can have those relationships and we can have those conversations if we're brave enough to have them, I think.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And we'd love to hear what your audience thinks about this as well. I mean, what do you think about the idea of, can we just agree sometimes to disagree? Does everyone have to be right, or does that automatically make someone wrong? Definitely let us know, especially for our podcast audience. We'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. For those who are just tuning in on the radio side or online, you're listening to Joy, Love, and Abundance. I'm joined by, you just heard there, Rodney-Eric-Lopez. Also, we have Patrice-Tanaka. I'm Cyrus-Webb. We're kind of talking about still some of the events that have been taking place this month, but also, of course, culminating with the whole idea of being able to move forward and to be able to think about ways that we can turn the page in our own lives, I think. This has become a personal thing for me, and I have to say, too, being transparent, I've always considered myself to be a forgiving person. I've always thought that I was someone who did not hold grudges, but I will have to put an asterisk to that and say I have a very small circle of people I consider trusted friends, and when something happens in that circle, I found it very hard, because I think betrayal is something I think everyone has felt in some form or fashion, and it's not easy. You want to be the bigger person, but it is not easy always to let things go. You know, for me, as I was thinking about this month and all the things that have happened, it reminds me of life, right? There are sometimes traumatic things that do occur. I wanted to share with our audience, though, and I hope people take away from this month as we're wrapping up the month of January, is even when bad things happen, you can still choose the good. You can still choose to not allow those things to define you and move forward. And I think that's so important when it comes to our theme here, guys, of keeping that joy, love, and abundance. Rodney, what are your thoughts about that, about our audience, how they can be able to kind of take the events of this month and kind of think about how they can not lose themselves in it as they move forward?
It's a great topic, and I think it's something we're all wrestling with in our own ways. I think one way we do that, I think there's more than one way to do that. I think one way to do that is to first look inward. Your body and your spirit and your soul, knows the truth of something. When you sit and you can meditate and you can listen to what your body is telling you, when does your body feel at peace? Are you at peace when you are activated by some trigger? Whether it's on the news or in a conversation with an uncle or an aunt or someone else in your community, when do you find peace? And then how can you extend that peace to someone else, particularly someone that you may not agree with? Because if all we want to do is surround ourselves with people that agree with us, well, then we're going to have a very small circle, and we're not going to be able to extend our relationships beyond our immediate families and friends. And so if we want the kind of life that is expansive, then I think we need to think about, what does peace look like for me, and what does peace look like for my neighbor?
Yeah, really good point. Patrice, I'm curious as to your thoughts about this. I mean, especially for our audience out there. I mean, a lot's happened in this month, and as we're saying goodbye to January, this first month of 2021, what is your hope that they're able to do kind of with the themes that we've seen kind of take place of not only turning the page, but also being able to have that healing so that they don't lose their joy, love, and abundance?
I guess I'm still stuck on something you said just a few minutes ago, Cyrus, because I see you as one of the easiest people to engage with, because I see you as having no edges and having goodwill towards everyone. But what do you do when you are betrayed by someone who's close to you? Can you forgive and, continue having a relationship? Or is that person who betrayed you in your inner circle, do you cut them out? What is it that you do? How do you, kind of move forward?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I have to say, and I'm just being very transparent here, and this is why I love this show, because it's so different than what I do in my quote unquote day job with Conversations Live. This has been a struggle for me. And that's just a very real answer. I am a person who has been notorious for cutting people off. Part of the criticism in my home state of Mississippi is that as I have grown in my success, that the circle has gotten smaller, mainly because when I feel as though people, you can tell when someone has an agenda or when someone has, done things, and it has, and I do that. I've always considered it as a way of safeguarding my peace, because when you can't have someone around you don't trust, it's very hard to kind of sit down and break bread with that person, right? However, I did have a situation with my closest friend of over 20 years, and I have to say, we had a situation come up, and it was very difficult. I wanted that friendship to last, and I have tried to move forward, and that's one of the things he and I talk about a lot is in our friendship, is that, it's, and he even talked to me about that. Cyrus, you're a good person, but you have this defense mechanism. You start just pull out the sheath. So what I have learned to do, though, is to make a decision, Patrice, for myself. And it may not work for everyone in our audience, but I say this. I look at what happened and say, is this something that I can forgive and move on with this person? I also will say, is this something I can forgive and I cannot move on with this person? I can forgive them for what happened, but I cannot, in good conscience, move forward with them. If I make the first choice, then I feel like it's on me not to keep bringing that ill will up. Not to bring up, 10 years ago when that happened, because I've made the choice to move forward. So that has been a struggle for me, and that's just a very, very honest answer, Patrice, that because I don't like disagreements, I don't like that. I don't like feeling like I can't be myself or trust who I'm talking with. And when I find myself in a situation where you've let me know that that's an issue, I just have, in the past, have been very clear about, okay, this is as far as we can go together.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I'm somebody, too, who finds it difficult to cut people off totally. And a therapist once gave me this construct that makes it easier for me to distance myself to some people. She said, think of it as you're on stage in a theater, and there are some people, your closest and most trusted friends and family, who are a front row orchestra. And someone who has hurt you, who you're not sure if you can ever trust them, they're the third balcony at the rear. So they're still in your theater, but they're not close enough to continue to hurt you and harm you. So that's helped me not to make it an either or kind of a.
Oh, I like that. I like that, Patrice. I like that.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And I will say this too for our audience, since we're kind of talking about these things. And again, this came up for me. I was having this conversation with my best friend, actually after the inauguration, because I think that that Biden, he is, and I've heard other people say this, and it may end up being the truth. I guess we will see that he may be just the person for the time that we're in, because he is about acknowledging, but also moving forward. And I think, if we can be that person, I think that says a lot about us, right? And I think if we can, in our own lives, I think that's a great way to be able to preserve our peace, but also to keep that joy, love, and abundance there.
Yes, I agree.
Well, we all three, one of the things that's kind of become a theme of this show for our audience is that we kind of scour our thoughts about something that may have made an impact for us that we want to be able to share with all of you. Patrice, you had a great one kind of tying in, actually, what we've been talking about here. Why don't you tell our audience about it?
Yeah, I guess I had such a girl crush on Amanda Gorman, our youngest inaugural poet. And I'm still blown away by the sight and sound of her, right? And this 22-year-old young woman is following in the footsteps of some giants, Maya Angelou and Robert Frost. And she held her own. And in fact, every talk show interview I've seen since the inauguration, she has only risen in my esteem for her. She was just magnificent from the moment she ascended the blue carpeted steps in her canary yellow coat and that fire engine red headband. I mean, just that shot was just spectacular, and she was mesmerizing. When she spoke, saying, "Girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president." I know that women and girls across the country and around the world were transfixed. I was transfixed as a woman. And the whole ceremony where we witnessed Kamala Harris being sworn in as the first Black Asian female vice president by Sonia Sotomayor, the first Latina Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, it was an epic moment for women and gender equality, which Hillary Clinton once called the great unfinished business of the 21st century. For the first time in the history of our country, the president's cabinet actually reflects the diversity of America, and importantly, it is a gender-balanced cabinet. And all of this gives me great hope and joy for our country. Inauguration Day was epic and memorial because we saw powerful women on stage in positions of power, not just the wives, the first ladies of powerful presidents. We saw Vice President Kamala Harris. We saw Amanda Gorman. We saw Sonia Sotomayor. We saw Amy Klobuchar. We saw Lady Gaga and J-Lo and Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama. I mean, so many fabulous women. And I'm going to remember this day for years to come because gender balanced leadership has been my own personal mission in life, and it's why I'm such a passionate supporter of organizations like the Girl Scouts, which I view as our biggest pipeline for our next generation women leaders. And I think the inauguration ceremony was important because young girls could finally see future women leaders that look like them. And they're now going to be able to envision themselves sitting at leadership tables in the not too distant future and in their lifetimes. That is exhilarating. So I'm going to, I don't know if I'm going to be talking about the inauguration next week's show, but right now it's just so strong.
Well, look,
Patrice, I have a, Cyrus, can I jump in here for a second?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So Patrice, I have a question for you because as I was listening to you, it occurred to me. I mean, it didn't occur to me. It occurred to me in the moment. I mean, I know this about you, that you have been a CEO of companies. You have run your own companies and grown them and sold them, and you've been a leader in a lot of different ways. I'm hoping that with each passing year, there are fewer and fewer men who who don't believe that women don't belong in positions of power and influence. Yeah. But I'm wondering, like, when you talk to groups, particularly about women empowerment, just what does a country, what does a company, what does an organization have to gain? How is it made better by putting women in positions of leadership and in positions of power and influence? Why are we better as a country, as a company, or as an organization when women are visibly and really in positions of power and influence?
Well, there's so much research showing that the more diverse a company is, the higher performing that company is in terms of productivity and profitability. So that should be the best reason for corporate CEOs to get on the bandwagon, and increasingly so. And in fact, it's not just gender equity; it's diversity in every possible way. You know, when you're brainstorming and coming up with the next new innovation, you want every possible viewpoint and input and creative thinking and life experience to weigh in on, coming up with the next big thing that's really going to make a difference for the company and for, the customers and clients they serve and for society at large. So diversity is really a no-brainer. And I think more and more corporate CEOs are understanding that if you're not reflecting diversity at every level, including on your board of directors, then you are really sub-optimizing. And that doesn't make you a really great buy for people looking to invest. So, I think it's just a no-brainer. And we're getting there. It's just this is the first time in this cabinet that you finally see, what, corporate America and many part country are seeing and reflecting, which is diversity. Now we finally see it in the cabinet, and we see gender, equity. And I fully believe that it's going to be a kick-ass cabinet with people bringing everything to the party to make this country stronger and better and, you know, and growing and getting rid of the pandemic once and for all.
Thank you for that.
Well, this week I wanted to quickly just mention someone who I had an opportunity to have a great chat with on Conversations Live, and that being Stacey Dash. A lot of people have gotten to know Stacey because of her work in television and film. They know her as Dion Marie Davenport from Clueless, and also the television show by that name, and some other great films as well. But she is in 2020, while so many things were kind of in place. She was able to really dive into another passion of hers, and that is interior design. And I think it really showed how you can be able to diversify, and you don't have to just focus on one thing. You can be passionate about many things in life. And Stacey's definitely shown that, and she's doing her first online lecture this year, kind of sharing that whole idea of the life of the character and being able to bring your best self forward in what you do, not only professionally but also personally. So I definitely wanted to bring that up to our audience. Make sure you guys are following Stacey. You can find her on Twitter as her main platform, and just her name, Stacey Dash, and we'll be linking that up for you guys via the podcast. Rodney?
Did she, when you talked with her, did she get to talk about like her own experience as an actress and now moving into this other place? Did she feel like she was stuck in a box, or did she feel confident about stepping out of one line of work and exploring this new opportunity?
Well, she actually said she has been passionate about this for some time, Rodney, and she didn't feel like she had to do an either or, but she did feel like she was curious about how her audience would embrace it, because they've gotten to know her for that one thing. But she said it has definitely been exciting for her to be able to share it. And I would not be surprised if we end up seeing a show of some kind coming from this from her, either that she produces herself or that someone picks up.
That's just so fascinating, because I just think that so many of us, like you said, Cyrus, a little while ago, so many of us, we paint ourselves into a corner, or we're painted into a corner due to life circumstances where, we might spend our lives in a particular career, or we go to school for something, and then we kind of spend many years toiling at a particular job or career and realize that we might have other passions, we might have other interests and callings in life, and it's always a good thing to heed those callings, whether it's something you get paid for or something you do on the side. But
right.
We're called to many things in life, and I think it's a good idea to always follow those passions.
Such a great point. And I hope our audience is able to do that as well. Guys, it's been another great show. So glad that our audience could join us for this episode of Joy, Love, and Abundance. On behalf of Patrice, Rodney, and myself, we definitely want to say thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for being a part of this program. And may you continue to have a week full of great joy, love, and abundance. Until next time, you all make it a great one.